to be approved.
Perfecto, entonces comencemos.
Calling an annual meeting to order. As soon as quorum is reached, the highest ranking outgoing officer calls the meeting to order and does the roll call. If this is a new council's term, the highest ranked returning officer calls the meeting to order and does the roll call. If there is no returning officer, the AA calls the meeting to order and presides until the chair pro term has been elected. It is now 6:02, and this meeting of Community Educational Council 9 will come to order. My name is Wanda Jackson, and I am convening the annual meeting for the purpose of electing officers. I will now do a roll call. Roll call. Ade.
Present.
Maribel.
Present.
Araceli. Myself, present. Rochelle. Rosanna, Noemi, Evelyn, Natasha, Rosemary. We do have quorum. The council bylaws requires the officers be elected by roll call vote at the annual meeting. To be elected, a candidate must have at least 6 votes. Officers remain in position until their successor has been elected. The first order of business is to elect the chair pro team to chair the election meeting until the president has been elected. I've already been elected, so I'm going to move on. Okay. So we will be conducting a vote for this position. So for me to be co-chair, so I will do a roll call once again. Ade? Yes. Maribel? Araceli?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Michelle? Natasha? We have quorum.
So congratulations to Wanda Jackson, who has now been elected to serve as chair pro tem, and she will conduct the election of officers for the 2021-2022.
Election of pro tem. Nominations for pro tem are now closed, and we will proceed to a roll call. Congratulations, Wanda Jackson has been elected to serve as pro team and will conduct the election of officers for 2021-2022. To elected officers, we will vote upon each position before moving on to the next, so that any candidate not elected to an office can run for others. I will take nominations. Members can nominate themselves. If a member is nominated by another member, I will confirm that he or she accepts the nomination. If a member is not present but has submitted his or her nomination in writing, the AA or another member, he or she will be treated the same as any member. Member who is present, including having 2 minutes statement read aloud by someone else, each nominee will allow to make a speech up to 2 minutes. Following the candidate's presentation, we will conduct a roll call vote. All positions must be voted on even if there's only one candidate. Where there are 2 or more candidates, Each member must make a choice and vote for one or other. Members may abstain from voting. If no candidate receives at least 6 votes, we will move on to the next position and return to the undecided position at the end. If a position remains unfilled over 2 or more rounds of voting, the incumbent will continue in the position. New elections for all unfilled positions must be put on the agenda of the following month's calendar meeting. Is the procedure clear to all members? First, we will elect the council's president. Are there any nominations for the office of president?
I'm going to nominate Ms. Ade. I second that nomination. I second that nomination.
Nominations for the office of president are now closed. I will now call each candidate in alphabetical order to make a statement of up to 1 to 2 minutes. After all candidates have spoken, we will proceed with the roll call.
So I did see that we're going to
Sí, bueno, el motivo por el que yo quiero ser presidenta es para seguir empoderando nuestro consejo, para seguir trabajando para nuestro distrito. So the reason why I elected as a city president was because I want to continue to empower our community and people in the community. Y para poder lograr nuestros objetivos, nuestras metas como consejo, ya que es poco tiempo, 2 años, y debido a nuestra pandemia no fue muy fructuoso nuestro trabajo. Try to achieve our goals, even though 2 years were short because of the pandemic. No perdemos la visión del consejo y que quiero seguir trabajando con la ayuda de mis compañeros que quieren para salir adelante con el consejo. Gracias. So I want to continue with the vision and with the help of my council members, continue to further my vision of the council, and thank you.
We will call for a vote. Roll call. Ade? Ade has accepted for president. Maribel? Myself accept. Araceli? Griselle? Natasha? We do have quorum, and Ade is the president for 2021 through 2022. Thank you. Next, we will elect first vice president. Are there any nominations for the office of first vice president?
Sí, yo nomino a la señora María González como primera vicepresidente. Well, I'm excited to nominate María González as vice president. I accept.
Nominations for the first vice president are now closed. I will call each candidate, or I will call candidate in alphabetical order to make a statement of up to 1 to 2 minutes. After the candidate has spoken, we will proceed to roll call vote.
I want to continue to do my job that the pandemic has made difficult for us to achieve a goal that we have we have, we have a vision as a PC now, and we want to continue this vision. And I want to sit here and work with my president to make that vision come possible. Hopefully this year, we're able to work better with our schools and help them achieve what they need, especially our families and students. So this is why I'm running for first time.
I will do roll call, first vice president. Ade, Maribel, myself except, Araceli, Griselle, Natasha. Everyone has voted unanimously for Maribel to become our first vice president. We thank her for the year 2021, 22. Next, we will elect council for second vice president. Are there any nominations for the office of the second vice president?
I nominate Araceli Figueroa. I second the nomination.
I will now do a roll call. Oh. I was supposed to do that. I will now do a roll call for the office of second vice president. Ade, Maribel, myself except Araceli, Griselle, Natasha. Vote unanimously. Araceli, you are now our second vice president for 2021, 2022.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And I just want to say that I will continue helping the kids and community and try to do my best and help in a team with my team members. Thank you.
Thank you, Araceli. Now I will give the mic to our president, because we are getting ready to proceed with recording secretary.
Ahora elegiremos a nuestro secretario de actas del consejo. Empezamos por las nominaciones. So now we'll start with the nominations of secretary. I nominate Ms. Jackson, Wanda Jackson. So, ¿alguien la acepta? Ok. Araceli Figueroa, segunda en la nominación. Señora Jackson, ¿usted acepta la nominación?
Yes, I accept.
Entonces vamos a pedirle que nos hable 2 minutos, señora Jackson, de por qué usted le gustaría ser como secretaria del consejo.
Well, this is my second term coming back in. I feel very good about pandemic, making sure that our minutes were kept and our votes were tallied, and I continue to do the job, and I appreciate my board members for selecting me for appointee or recording secretary at 2021, 2022.
Gracias, señora Jackson. Votamos. El rojo. Aide, acepto. Mariel. Araceli. Wanda. Grisel. Natasha. Felicidades, señora Jackson, nuestra nueva secretaria del Consejo de Distrito 9. Bueno, continuamos con nuestra siguiente miembro del consejo, que sería electo el tesorero. Abrimos nominaciones.
I would like to nominate Natasha Sanchez for treasurer.
La señora Cardona asegura la nominación. Señora Natasha, ¿usted acepta esa nominación? Sí, perfecto.
Hi everyone, this is my first time, but I would like to take this opportunity to do everything for my colleagues to help us in numbers. I would like to use this opportunity to help my team members use our budget to provide the most beneficial. No apologies, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to help my team members use our budget to do everything within our power to benefit our youth within our district.
Bueno, pues entonces votamos. Aide, acepta. Maribel. Araceli. Grisel. Señora Jackson. Y Natasha. Felicidades, señora Natasha, en esta nueva tesorera de Consejo para el año 2020 y 2022. Bueno, entonces tenemos nuevos funcionarios para este consejo y vamos a hacer el reemplazamiento, siendo las 6:20. Maribel hace la moción, ¿alguien la segunda? Araceli segunda la moción. Hemos terminado nuestra agenda de la agenda. Vamos a pasar entonces a la sesión de negocios. Buenas tardes a todos. Nuevamente les damos la bienvenida a las personas que se nos han unido por Zoom y aquí en persona, principalmente a los padres y a los integrantes del distrito que también nos acompañan en la cita. Son 6:19. Por favor, señora Nelson, ¿nos puede hacer el llamado de orden? Paso de la lista.
Welcome to our business session. I will now do roll call. Ade, Maribel, myself present, Araceli, Grisel, Natasha. We have quorum.
Gracias, señora Jackson. Nuestro siguiente punto sería revisión de las minutas, el presupuesto, los estatutos y el calendario tentativo de nuestras reuniones. Si se recuerdan los revisión de minutas, la reunión pasada no tuvimos quórum, no tenemos minutas, entonces procedimos con nuestro siguiente punto, que sería el presupuesto. Bueno, en su carpeta, si pueden revisarla, tenemos incluido el material del bote. Ustedes saben que este bote es algo tentativo y en cualquier momento podemos modificarlo de acuerdo a las necesidades del consejo. Nuestro muelle consta de $25,000 y el cual se va a dividir de la siguiente manera. Reembolsos para los miembros, 17,400. Somos 10 miembros, en total serían 15,000 y 2,400 para el presidente. Y dan un total de 2,400. 17,400, perdón. Para los supplies estamos eligiendo $7,600. Para los supplies estamos poniendo $7,600. Sí, en los cuales constan la copiadora, $900. Otra copiadora, pero láser. Bueno, otra copiadora que necesitamos, 1,200. Se van a adquirir 5 sillas para los miembros del consejo con un total de $600. Y para otros supplies, $400. Para el aire acondicionado, 3,000. Y para la tarjeta Picard, 1,500. 3,000 dólares. Para la Picard, $1,500. Hace un total entonces de $25,000.
So just to interrupt, the 900 that you see there is that gold. So in order for us to have a new lease, we must pay the $900 off. So that's why you see 900 for a copier and then the other amount for.
Gracias, Leonardo, por esa aclaración. Perfecto. ¿Tienen alguna objeción o podemos votar? Perfecto. Perfecto, entonces votemos. Perfecto, entonces no habiendo objeción, vamos a poder votar en nuestra siguiente sesión, ¿ok? El otro punto a tratar es los estatutos. Los estatutos es un poquito largo, entonces, ¿les parece si empezamos mejor por el calendario? Y después por los estatutos. Son el mismo punto que tenemos que tratar. Perfecto. En su carpeta también está incluido ese documento donde está el calendario, la sección del calendario. ¿Sí? ¿Lo tienen? Perfecto. Entonces, para el mes de septiembre tenemos nuestra reunión en persona en esta misma escuela. ¿Sí?
Yes.
So there's ones that are highlighted, the ones that are highlighted have accessibility, and they also, or they were interested in something.
Ok, para el mes de septiembre entonces tenemos esta misma escuela para hacer nuestra reunión. Para el mes de octubre tendríamos la B11, C11, 10, 11. Ajá. ¿Están de acuerdo? Recuérdense que esto nos estamos basando para elegir las escuelas dependiendo de lo que tenemos en los estatutos, y ahorita los vamos a recordar para que hablemos de ellos para que vean por qué estamos eligiendo estas escuelas. Nuestra siguiente escuela para el mes de noviembre podría ser la PS 63.
The next month, for November, the meeting, our school for meeting, yes. 63? Everybody agree? Because it's not wheelchair accessible, but the parent coordinator was very interested in.
Ok, gracias por esta clarificación. Esta escuela no es accesible, gracias Melanie, pero están muy interesados en que tengamos una reunión allí. La podríamos considerar tal vez más adelante. Ok. Para el mes de noviembre, entonces podríamos utilizar la 10, 132.
So for November, we can use the S1.
¿Sí lo tienes en el papel? Sí, perfecto, eso sería para noviembre. Para diciembre, la PS 204. Ajá. Sí. Para enero tenemos la 218, la PS 218. Para febrero, la MS 229. Sí, si se dan cuenta, la 229 es parcialmente accesible. Creo que nos vamos a tener que tomar la 232. Para marzo, la PS 236. Para abril, la MS 303. Y viene para mayo, la MS 327.
And for May, we have MS 227. 327.
¿Sí la usan? ¿Sí? ¿La usan? Para mayo. Ajá. Ahora para junio, que es el mes que nos falta. Para junio, la última reunión del año escolar sería la 10-555. ¿Sí? Bueno, agradecemos mucho a las escuelas que están interesadas en albergar las reuniones del consejo. Pero para esta parte de calendario, tenemos una parte en específico en nuestros bailos. Que queremos seguir esos lineamientos. Entonces, una de las medidas oficiales es que estas escuelas deben de ser completamente accesibles para toda persona. Entonces, vamos a empezar a revisar nuestros bailos y en su momento ustedes van a notar en dónde viene lo de las escuelas. A ver, en el artículo 3, su página 3 de los bailos, dice reuniones.
Los de las escuelas.
Los bailos vienen en las carpetas y creo que esos bailos anteriormente ya los hemos revisado. No vamos a hacerle ningún cambio. Aún así, esos bailos se los van a llevar a ustedes para que los tengan en su poder y los puedan revisar en cualquier momento. ¿Están de acuerdo? Perfecto. En la última página pueden firmar sus bailos y se las pueden entregar a nuestra asistente. Firmaron sus bailos, ¿verdad? Entonces vamos a votar por el calendario, por favor. ¿Puede hacer un llamado, señora Jackson?
Roll call vote, Ms. Holloway.
Motion to adjourn.
Ok, la señora González hace la moción y la señora Jackson la segunda.
Okay.
Roll call.
I'm sorry. Okay, roll call goes as follows. Ade, Maribel, myself present, Araceli, Giselle, Natasha. We have four.
Una vez hecho nuestro aplazamiento, muchas gracias, señora Jackson, y vamos a pasar a nuestra sección de calendario. Gracias por el grupo. Bienvenidos nuevamente a todos los que se nos están uniendo por el online. Padres, personal, invitados, gracias por acompañarnos en esta reunión del Consejo de Educación del Distrito 9. Y bueno, entonces, como nuestro siguiente punto, escucharemos el informe de nuestro superintendente, el señor Harvey Sherman.
Okay, Mr. Sherman, if you on, you can unmute yourself and you can begin.
Hi, I'm on. Can you make me co-host again? Apologies, I got disconnected briefly.
You should be co-host now.
Okay, there I am. I think the angle is better if I'm over here. It's good to see everyone. And thank you for creating a blended space so that we can have participants remotely and in person right now. And congratulations to all the members of the CEC and to all the elected officials. And thank you to everyone who's participating both remotely and in person. Apologies about the noise. Hold on a second. Just 1 second. Let me close these windows. I think it'll help with the noise. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share a presentation. And for the panel, if you can just give me a thumbs up if you hear me well and you can see well.
They can see you, they can't hear you that well. We're trying to figure out how to.
Okay, sure. I'll hold on a second so you can make sure that you all can hear me better.
Mr. Sherman, can you try?
Okay, check 1, 2. How does that work for you, panelists? Show me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'll speak slowly and I'll speak clearly, okay? And hopefully that works for everyone. Regarding translation, are we pausing for translation?
Yes, we have interpretation.
Okay, does that mean that I need to stop or is it ongoing?
No, it's a simultaneous.
It's simultaneous.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, so please, at any point, Ms. Baez, stop me if you need to stop me so that I can make sure that everyone is hearing me okay. All right, so I have some updates to provide with you, and I also have some information that you requested of me. And of course, I'll be available for questions and answers and to address any concerns that you have. I do just want to state that I'm out of town, which is the only reason I'm not with you in person. I have every intention of being with you in person throughout the year, and I'm excited and grateful that the CEC is meeting in person again. So I want to start with health and safety, which is obviously on the forefront of everyone's mind. So this was one of the areas that the CDC requested that I give an update. And so I also want to say that I'm going to speak to what I can speak to, but that everything that you see here is under the governance of New York City. These are not District 9 decisions. These are NYC DOE decisions. These are Department of Education decisions, ultimately mayoral decisions, right? And so these aren't necessarily local in all of these cases, but I do want to share with you what the plan is and the steps that we are taking as a district, the steps we are taking as a superintendent's office, and certainly hear your questions, your concerns, and do my best to address them, okay? So first and foremost, schools will be open in September. That is the charge from our mayor, that is the focus of our chancellor, and that is the focus of District 9. There is not a remote option at this time, and I want to say from the outset, this is a mayoral decision. I understand that there is a strong advocacy to provide a remote option. Last year, we had in our district at any time, approximately 2/3 of our students were in remote instruction. In some schools, that was as low as half, and in other schools, that was over 80% of students were in remote instruction. The guidance from the CDC is that schools should be open with appropriate precautions, and that for the health and safety of students, including the mental health of students, it is extremely important that they be back in school taking the appropriate health precautions. Do I need to pause for whatever's happening there? Are we okay? We're good? Okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure. I didn't know if there was a technical issue. All of that said, I know that there is a concern among families about having a remote option, and that there are issues around trauma, there are issues around social and emotional learning, there are issues around health vulnerable children and parents. The concern is that it is important that children be physically in school. Students need to be receiving in-person instruction from teachers. They also need the social and emotional connections with their peers. That is the guidance of the CDC. In any case, whether or not there is a remote option is a mayoral decision. It is not a local decision. It is not something that District 9 can make a decision about. That really comes down to mayoral control and what they decide there. And so any concerns or advocacy around that will be most effective if directed towards the people making that decision. All staff will be required to either be vaccinated or to be tested weekly at their own time and expense. So these are the steps that are taken with schools being open. Number one, staff have to be vaccinated or tested weekly. Everyone will mask. The only exception is I'm vaccinated, I'm sitting in my office, there's one other person who's vaccinated sitting in my office, we don't have to mask. But if we're ever around children, ever around the public, any large gatherings, masking is required. 3 feet spacing will be required. In lunchrooms, classrooms, common rooms, physical education, 3 feet of social distancing has to be accommodated. For a while there, the conversation was whenever possible, but now the focus is in every classroom, in every space, all the time. Whenever possible really only applies to maybe change of period, kids are passing in the hallway. And even there, I've talked to principals about staggering change of period, having teachers move, limiting at any cost any kind of high concentration of students. Rooms must have proper air circulation. Testing of students will continue. We're still awaiting some guidance on what testing is going to look like in the coming year and what the thresholds will be around school closure and what all of that is going to look like. Those are things that we still don't have all the details around. I have called every single principal in the district, and as of today, I reached the last handful of principals. So I have personally spoken with every single principal in the district, and there is a plan for every school in the district to have appropriate spacing. So the 3 feet of social distancing will be accommodated in every classroom, every period, every day. So one of the other questions that was presented by the CEC was a concern about social and emotional learning and the mental health of students, but also of families and staff. And so I wanted to address that. SEL and the mental health of students is a central priority of our district. We identified that in our equity plan in the spring. SEL is one of the 4 primary areas, and I'll speak more about that later, but in particular, we are focused on a trauma-informed and research-based SEL program in every school. So I am going to require of every school that they be able to name where SEL programming is a part of every school day for every child. There will be increased access to funded social workers. One of the questions was whether or not there is a social worker in every school. There is not a funded social worker in every school. Almost every school in our district has a funded social worker, but it is not every one. The city targeted the schools and the neighborhoods and the populations where they perceive for there to be the greatest need. But this is an area where I continue to advocate and our principals continue to advocate. My stance is we need a social worker in every school, but ultimately that funding is something that we are advocating for around the city. And again, that's where your voice is really helpful as well. And there is increased access to funded social workers. So there are also a lot of available social workers to hire, and schools who see that need, but it wasn't funded with 100% fair student funding. Hopefully there's more flexibility in their budgets to support that as well, or to share a social worker with other schools. We are creating healing-centered schools. Every school in District 9 has a parent ambassador. I really want to thank the Parent Action Committee and Chauncey and Grizel and Ida and everyone for, I know a lot of you are on this call who are a part of the work that went into making sure that we saw that across the city, but we are leading the way in District 9. Every school has a parent ambassador for our healing-centered schools. We have a partnership with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence to implement Ruler for free in 7 of our schools, and it's available to every school for $10,000 over 4 years, which in a school budget is not a really tremendous amount. And the Yale Ruler program is a powerful SEL program. And so we're looking at that as sort of the option or preferred option for schools that don't have something to go to and are looking for something. We know that we have that partnership with our district. And then there are a cohort of schools who will choose SEL as their focus, and they will engage in multiple improvement cycles over the course of the year around SEL and share their learnings with all schools, and I'll speak more to that later. I want to give a brief update on Summer Rising. So it completed on Friday. This week is CBO only for our elementary school students. I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Deputy Varela, who, while I was on parent leave, made sure that she was covering Summer Rising, going to all the sites, supporting any of the programs where there were challenges. We know there were some challenges in terms of sort of the focus with the CBO and the expectations of DOE in several sites. And Deputy Varela did a tremendous job of ensuring that the support was there. We were always in touch. We made sure that we had strong programs across the district. Some schools did project-based learning, such as at 593. Some schools did thematic units, such as 294. Some schools did extended learning, where they really worked on things that they had done during the year, and they did that in the summer. An example of that is 109. We had a chancellor's visit to the PS11 site, including at that site was PS11, PS70, and 126. And fingers crossed, we may have another chancellor's visit at a D9 school during the last week that is CBO only. So hope to report back on that as well. As I mentioned, there were some concerns with CBO governance in terms of the CBO being charged in the afternoon, the CBO being in charge on Fridays, and the difference in expectations of CBOs and Department of Health versus the Department of Education. So we really had to kind of raise the expectations of the CBOs to match what we want for our children in our schools, to have those programs really matched. Overall, though, despite there being a few significant blips. Overall, it was a very smooth program. It was a very rewarding program for students, and it was a great step to get students back into school. I personally went around and spoke to a lot of students in several of the programs who articulated how important it was for them to be back in person. So I want to share some updates on city priorities, borough priorities, and district priorities. And then I will be happy to take questions. So the city has identified 4 priorities, which you see on the screen there. They are to develop and strengthen a welcoming and affirming school environment. They are to ensure high expectations and rigorous instruction for every single student, grounded in an asset-based mindset, meaning that we think about our students in terms of what they can do as opposed to what they cannot do. They are to implement inclusive curricula and assessment that center student voice and collaboration. So we really want culturally responsive learning that promotes what our students are experiencing, what they have to say, and really engaging them in the learning that they are going to experience. And then we're going to center time for ongoing and targeted professional learning communities. So these are the 4 areas that the city has identified. In terms of the borough, for all of the Bronx, these are our goals and priorities. They are to increase high school graduation by focusing on credit accumulation in the 9th grade, to reduce students at level 1 by 10% and increase students at level 3 and 4 by 10%. That will not be with the state test. That will be with the assessments that we give based on our baselines. They are to reduce chronic absenteeism to 30% for the borough, to ensure equity is beneath all of our teams and all of our priorities, and to ensure social and emotional learning for every child. In District 9, I want to share about our goals and priorities. I'm going to focus both on like the CEP, those are our formal goals, but also like our bigger picture informal goals that are more long-term. So on the CEP, we have named that 70% of all students, including subgroups, will meet their growth target in ELA and math. And the reason we focus on a growth target, as opposed to reducing level 1s and increasing 3 and 4s, is that this includes every student. So if I'm a student who already scored a level 3 or 4, then I'm not included in a goal to increase percentage of level 3s and 4s. And I'm not really a part of whether or not the district is moving forward. I also might be a student who my school doesn't think of as being pushable or slippable. Maybe I'm a solid level 2. And the thing about those performance goals is we end up focusing on the kids on the margins, and we focus a lot on testing. We focus on trying to move those small groups of kids. In consultation with all the members of the CEC, of the DLT, the district leadership team. And I also spoke with PAC about this and the equity team about this. We are focused on growth instead. And what that means is that every single student gets a growth target. And then we want to make sure that in every subgroup, we're seeing at least 70% of our kids hit their growth target. So it doesn't matter if you're level 1, a level 2, a level 3, a level 4, we're focused on the growth that you're going to make, the progress that you're going to make. And the reason this is so important is because a lot of times we have kids who, let's say I'm a 6th grader and I'm reading on a 2nd grade level. That's a level 1. And let's say I make 3 years of progress over the course of the year. I make tremendous progress. At the end of the year, I should be reading it close to a 7th grade level, but I'm really only reading at like a 4th grade level. And so it's still a level 1, even though I made a ton of progress. And so on account of that, we're focused on growth as opposed to performance. We are also focused on reducing our chronic absenteeism to 30%, including for all subgroups, the same as the borough. And we are focused on reducing the relative risk ratios for suspensions of our Black students and our students with disabilities. And that is because pre-COVID, we saw in District 9 that there was a really high disproportionate rate of suspensions of our Black students and our students with disabilities. Ultimately, I'm going to be completely honest and transparent with you at all times. I do not believe in suspensions. I think suspensions should be abolished. That is my personal belief and system, and I will never apologize for that. Kids should not be excluded from the community. If a student has to be removed because of the harm they have created, we shouldn't call it a suspension. It shouldn't be a suspension. It should be a time of social and emotional learning, a time of re-entering the community, a time of restoring the child, whatever harm they created, and we should be focused on community building and restorative practices. That said, the city code allows for suspension. I cannot mandate that principals don't suspend. However, I will hold principals to an expectation that in the case of any suspension, they are focused on how they are supporting the child, how they are supporting this, whoever might have been the victim of the behavior, how they are creating a community, how they are creating a restorative environment. And ultimately the focus is bring that child back to a positive relationship with the community. And so while we want to reduce that disproportionality of Black students and students with disabilities, ultimately we want to see a shift in practice in SEL across the district. The bigger picture here, I would like to rebrand our district. And what I mean by that is for us to really look at our mission and vision, to think about those shared expectations that we developed last year that were grounded in equity, that reflected the voice of all stakeholders, and to ensure that the way we speak about the outcomes in our district reflect the vision that we have for every child to be successful. I'm focused on enrichment opportunities for every child, focused on what kids can do as opposed to what kids can't do. I want to see every child read at grade level, and I want to see families of every culture, language, and religion be equal partners. These are not one-year goals, but these are the big picture goals that I have for our district. And so our CEP goals are in service of that. And as always, I am deeply interested in what the CEC perspective is on those goals and the goals of the CEC for our district. And these goals are in direct response to the values and the priorities that have been expressed to me by the CEC and parent leadership. So we have, I'm going to be really brief here because you guys have heard this. We have our equity priorities for next year and our equity plan. So you know the 4 areas: language access, CRSE, SEL, and special ed disproportionality. What I've done here is I've connected it to the CEP goals as well as connected it to the city priorities. And I can share this with the CEC to kind of see how that works. What I do want to share is that every school will focus their professional learning and improvement cycles on one area, and that should be in consultation with the SLT and with the leadership of that school, the parent leadership of that school. And I will be communicating to principals that they should not be making that decision until they have consulted with the SLT and talked with parent leaders, teacher leaders about what the priority area should be in their school. But regardless of the area that they focus on, everybody will be benefiting from the learning and the ideas that we try out in those improvement cycles. So I want to share some partnerships that we have in the district. So I'm really excited about this partnership that we have with Teaching Lab and with the Robin Hood Foundation coming into this coming year. We got a $600,000 grant to develop the quality of our early childhood literacy and middle school math and developing teacher practice. So obviously that's aligned to our goals and that's aligned to the city priorities. We also have a partnership with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, which I mentioned before. They're developing our district leadership team around SEL expectations in the district. They are sponsoring 7 schools, as well as developing leaders and teachers to be able to support students. So that's a partnership that I'm really excited about. We lined up both of those over the summer based on connections that I had and that the district had to get those grants in motion. The same with the Adelphi New York Edge grant. I'm gonna skip down there for a second. So based on a relationship I had at New York Edge, they reached out wanting to do this college and career readiness grant. They're partnering with Adelphi. We're applying for a $600,000 grant right now. So fingers crossed, we're waiting to see what happens there. And that would provide college and career readiness for all of our 6th grade students for 3 years in partnership with New York Edge and Adelphi. And we also have an ongoing partnership with Dr. Goldie Muhammad that is funded through our My Brother's Keeper funds. She is the author of Cultivating Genius, and we are redesigning our curriculum to be more culturally responsive and to support professional learning of all of our teachers. And finally, both CEI and New York Edge are expanding their CBOs. They're focused on District 9, and they have reached out to me asking which District 9 schools need CBOs. I have reached out to the principals. I'm looking to see what capacity they have, but we're going to see many more of our schools have CBOs and after-school partnerships as a result of the investment of CEI and New York Edge in District 9. So it is an exciting year ahead of us in District 9. I'm grateful for the partnership with the CEC. I'm grateful for all of our strong partners that we looked at in the last slide. And I am happy to take any questions at this time and to address your concerns and to hear your thoughts on our plans for the coming year.
Hello? Can you hear me?
So I see there is a question in the chat. Will there be summer rising again next summer? If so, what changes will be made for participants? Will there be a chance to have summer school and summer camp at the same time? I do not have information on that. If there is an opportunity for me to share, I will express any feedback about summer rising as we look ahead to next year, but I don't know what the plans will be.
Superintendent, we have a question over here. No, I don't like this no remote option, but is there a way for our students to get, that have 504 accommodations to get exemption? Because that's my worry. Let's say if they do contract COVID and any other sort of contract COVID, because my thing is you're losing out on classwork because you can have COVID and have no symptoms, and that would also affect the attendance as well. So is there any plans for those students who contract COVID and get our students with 504 accommodations get exemption for us?
So I'm really sorry I wasn't able to hear that clearly. Melanie, would you be able to repeat that for me since you're closer to the mic?
I don't want to miss the trick, which is I'm breaking.
That's the way we should do it. Yes.
I broke the mic. You know, I do not like this no remote option, but for our students who have 504 accommodations, is it possible to get them exemption forms? Also, for students who do contract COVID, because sometimes you can have COVID and have no symptoms, is there any plans for those kids to have a remote option? Because if not, then that affects attendance and their classwork, and it puts them behind. So again, will they be able to get a remote option if contracted with COVID, and can our babies with 504 accommodations get exemption?
Okay, so I will do my best to answer that question. And what I heard you asking, and Rizal, just give me a thumbs up if I have your question right, okay? So what I heard you asking is there any plan to have accommodations for students for a remote option? And also, what if a student contracts COVID or has COVID symptoms? Will there be remote options for that? That was my understanding. Yes? Okay. So as far as, are there any plans for any kind of remote accommodation right now? The answer to that question is no. That is the last thing that I have heard, that we have weekly meetings, we have updates. Right now, the mayor is firm. There will not be any accommodations, right? So the answer that we have been told to give, and the answer that is given, is that you can apply for home instruction. I know that home instruction is not the same thing. I know that home instruction is partial day. It's not with the school. It's not the whole program. You get an instructor to come by. It's not really the best thing when you're looking for like a remote option, but that is the only thing that we have on the table right now. So again, this is a mayoral decision, and that's really where that needs to go. As far as what happens if your child contracts COVID or has COVID symptoms, number one, they should definitely stay home. Number two, in terms of how will instruction be provided, I will ask that question at the next reopening meeting we have, which is Thursday. That is a great question, Grizel. I have not seen clear guidance as to what we do when a student has COVID symptoms, needs to stay home. How are we supposed to provide instruction? One would imagine that remote would be the best way to do it, but we don't have any provisions for remote instruction right now, so I will ask that question. And I will get back to the CEC.
Thank you, Superintendent Sherman. So now we have a question from Ida Ramos Flores.
Buenas tardes, señor superintendente. Tengo 3 preguntas para usted. La primera sería, ¿cuántos casos de COVID hubo en Sunrise y cómo se manejaron?
Good evening, Mr. Sherman. Our first question is, how many cases of COVID was there in Summer Rising, and how was this managed?
La segunda, ¿se la digo o me espero?
Did you hear my first question?
Sorry, go ahead. What?
The first question, you heard it?
Oh, so you
Or
have
you want
more
me
to
to,
that question?
Tell you the second question?
Sure, you can tell me the second question, then I'll answer it together.
En Homecoming, ¿cuáles son las fechas que las escuelas tienen para hacerlo? Ya que algunas escuelas lo hicieron en otoño y solo lo hicieron para los estudiantes remotos.
When are the dates for homecoming, which some schools did it in the fall, and other students were doing it in remote. Well, they're only done in remote.
I didn't really I didn't understand that last question. I'm sorry.
La última sería que
About,
el Homecoming, algunas escuelas la hicieron en otoño y solo la hicieron para a estudiantes remotamente. ¿Cuál sería la fecha que las escuelas van a utilizar para hacerlas ahora en el regreso a clases?
So some homecomings were done remotely in the fall. So when will the schools be doing it when they come back to school? What date?
all right.
And one more question, last question.
La última pregunta. Cuando usted dijo que las escuelas deben de elegir su área, ¿cuándo sería que la fecha límite para que la elijan y los padres pueden apoyar o abogar para que traigan estos programas a la escuela?
You told, you said that the schools should choose certain areas. Should the parents could advocate for these programs so they could come to the school? So these are 3 questions that I have. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let me try to answer those in order, and I might need you to help me with the third question again, but there were, from what I can see, there were about 8 cases across the course of the entire summer in all District 9 Summer Rising programs. There were 8 cases. They were handled the way that they were handled during the normal year. So basically, anyone that was in the room with those students was informed, and they should have isolated for the 10 days. Excuse me. So there were no clusters. There were no closures. There were no clusters. There were no closures. There were 8 isolated cases spread out across different sites all throughout the summer, which is a very low number when you think about the many thousands of students in District 9 that we had participating in Summer Rising. We had 8 cases. Families were informed. They had to isolate, and that was it. The other question was about homecoming. So we're going to continue to discuss this as a district. I would like to actually have a conversation with the CEC Executive Board about this, and just in terms of the space and welcoming committee, a welcoming environment that we are creating in every school. I know that the expectation in the spring was that everybody do something in person. I know that every school did not do that, and it remains my expectation that every school create an in-person opportunity for students and families to be welcomed back to the building. And so if they didn't do it in the spring, my expectation is they'll do it in the fall. This isn't really something that I can mandate. It is something that I can expect. It's something that I can question principals about those steps that they took. In the end, though, they also have to make a decision that is right for their community in consultation with their SLT. I don't see why a school can't have something in person. It could be outdoors. It's just a way that I really think, like, if we're going to put kids in the school building, we got to make people feel comfortable with being back in person. That's why District 9, we are the only district who have had a homecoming like we had. So we led the way in the city there. Most of our schools did a good job of this, but I know some of them, we still need to have that push. And Melanie, what was the third question?
So I believe the third question, do schools need to choose their focus area, and can parents advocate for which schools should focus on?
Yes, got it, yes. So the principal is going to make that decision in consultation with their school leadership team. And what they should do, and I'll be meeting with the principals on August 31st, and we're going to talk about this process. I don't want any principal making up their mind. I don't want them just talking to their SLT. If they're really going about it right, they should ask their SLT to speak to parents. They should really look at their data. They should think about what they're strong in and where they need to grow. And they should really understand that this is about professional learning, right? So if you're already strong in something, maybe it's time, maybe you should focus on one of these other areas. But what parents should do is they should go to their SLT members or to their principal if they want to advocate for one of those 4 areas that they think should be the focus area of the school.
Thank you, Superintendent. So we have one more question from Aricelis Figueroa.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, give me one moment. I wanted to ask the seating arrangement, because since all the students are coming back to the building, it's going to be more students in the classrooms. So the seating arrangement with a student with a one-to-one para, sometimes I have seen classes with 2 or 3 students with a para. How the seating arrangement is going to be in that classroom is my concern.
Thank you for that question. And thank you to everyone on the CEC. All your questions are great questions. You're giving me questions that I have to go back and ask about, which means they're really good questions. I think I can answer this one though. So every adult is a part of the social distancing. So if the room can hold 25 kids, 25 people, and there's a teacher and there's 3 paras, that's 4 people. So now there's only room for 21 kids, right? And so that should create, and so that really determines how many people can be in the room. And this seating should really be around social distancing, right? So we continue to not want kids to be right next to each other for extended periods of time. But this is also one of those places where whenever possible may come in, because with paraprofessionals, we know that they provide support services that are very intimate for some children, right? So for example, some of our smaller children, they need diapering. Some of our children, they need therapeutic intervention, right? And our paras are trained for that. So it's really going to be on a case-by-case basis and what is developmentally appropriate. And in the end, we have to put the wellness of the child balanced against the possibility of exposure. In most cases, a one-to-one para is going to keep that 3 feet of distance. They're not going to be right next to the student, but you know, different circumstances may call for that just based on the IEP of the child.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
We have one more question from Ms. Wanda Jackson.
No problem. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent. My question to you this evening is about TREP training. How many District 9 schools have completed the training?
Which training?
TREP training, the trauma.
Oh, at all 48 schools have
So-
a, are you talking about the Healing Center, the parent ambassadors?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm talking about in the district schools. They said that they told us that all of our teachers and staff have completed or should be completing the TREP training. I'm asking how many District 9 schools have completed that type of training?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not, that isn't something that I have that information right now, so I can get that. And at our next meeting, I can let you know. But that isn't, I mean, it being that it's the summertime, our compliance rate isn't going to be super high with that. So I'll have to look into that and get back to you at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
the reason why I asked this question is because that the parents, it would help if parents and caregivers and the community understood what the TREP program was, and we at the districts can make sure that that training is occurred with all our staff inside District 9.
Absolutely. Where was it that it was stated that,
In the wellness, in the ambassador program.
so at the ambassador program, they stated that every staff
Cool.
member would be trained
Yes.
in TREP.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna have to get back to you about that. That isn't
Okay.
something that I have direct knowledge about.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that we're, our district is covered with the trauma training in order to help and move forward as a district.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that question. I agree about the essentialness of that. And I am going to follow up. I have a list of things now, and next meeting I'll be able to speak to that, okay?
Thank you. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
I have a hands up like Kai did.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Kai Sid from the
Hi,
FACE
Kai.
office.
Yeah.
And maybe to that last question are you referring to the Community Health Wellness Collective?
She said yes.
Okay, because my understanding of the program is that the program consists of 4 workshops, and then the person who took these workshops will give a workshop back to the school community. So, and then during the workshop that they will be providing, you know, both parents and staff invited to that. My colleague Aisha George is the one coordinating that program for my office, as well in coordination with the other office. So I can get in touch with her and ask her more about your question. Is that, do you think that that's something that you'd like to pursue?
Yes, she said
You're
yes.
asking me or Wanda right now?
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
so I can pose that question to her and we'll get back to you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yes, thanks.
There's a question in the chat. So yeah, I addressed the question about summarizing. I can't speak to what next year will look like. I don't have that information right now, but I will raise those questions about that plan for next year. I think that has not been decided yet. Will students and staff members need to submit a negative COVID test should they have symptoms? And how will attendance be reported for these individuals? So the procedure for staff is that they have to either be vaccinated or provide a negative test once a week. The procedure for students is that they will be randomly tested, and that if they do not pass the health screening, they should self-isolate. In terms of what that's going to mean for attendance, again, that really kind of goes back to, are we going to have a remote possibility for kids who don't pass a health screener, have a positive test, have been exposed, have symptoms, any of the reasons where it's because of COVID that we're asking them to stay home? That is a great question that I need to get more information on. And so, like I said, there's a reopening question coming up, a reopening meeting coming up for superintendents that we're having one a week. And so I will raise that question.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Sherman. I don't believe that there are any more questions. So we can conclude this portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
No tenemos electo, ¿no? No tenemos ahí en Zoom ningún electo, ¿verdad, Melanie?
So at this time, I'm just going to check to see if there are any elected officials joining us remotely. Can you please type in the chat and make that known? At this time, I do not see any elected officials. So at this time, I don't see any elected officials joining us remotely.
Gracias, Melanie. La pregunta fue si había en la reunión algún electo. Y a este momento Melanie nos acaba de informar que no tenemos a ningún presente, entonces vamos a continuar con nuestros siguientes puntos.
At this moment, I asked Ms. Melanie to verify if we have any elected officials. There was none, so now we'll continue where we.
Bueno, entonces continuamos con nuestras aprobaciones, por favor. Señora Jackson, ¿me puede ayudar haciendo roll call para aprobar nuestras el presupuesto del año fiscal 2021-2022?
Roll call vote.
We'll be doing roll call for July 21st minutes. Roll call vote as follows. Day.
Approve.
Maribel. Myself, accept. Araceli. Griselle. Natasha. One member is coming.
Araceli, you approve of the minutes? Do you approve of the minutes, Araceli? She approves.
Araceli is approved. We have a quorum and minutes are being accepted for July 21st.
Perfecto, seguimos con nuestro molde.
So now we'll continue with our budget.
Sí, podemos continuar con nuestro presupuesto.
We will be approving our budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. I will conduct roll call. Day. Maribel. Myself approved. Araceli. Griselle. Natasha. Everyone has approved. It has passed.
Seguimos con la aprobación de los estatutos.
So next section will be the approval of our bylaws.
We will now conduct roll call for approval of bylaws. As follows, Adi. Maribel. Myself approved. Araceli. Griselle. Natasha. And passed.
Seguimos con la aprobación del calendario.
So now we continue to the approval of our calendar.
I will do a roll call for approval of the calendar meetings for the year. Dave, Maribel, myself, yes, Araceli, Brazil, Natasha. Tasha unanimously.
Gracias, miembros, por hacer esta aprobación de todos nuestros puntos a tratar el día de hoy. La siguiente parte sería nuestro informe de presidente. En este caso, es un grato informarles y agradecer principalmente al superintendente Sherman y a su equipo del Distrito 9.
Thank you, all members, for the approvals of our, and now we'll continue to the president report, and I want to thank Mr. Sherman for his updates.
Gracias también a su equipo de trabajo del Distrito 9 por habernos permitido o por habernos albergado en su sitio o en su website.
Thank you for his team for allowing us to be added in the website.
Y les hacemos el anuncio que el CICI del Distrito 9 tiene su propio website y los invitamos a que lo visiten. Melanie, por favor, vamos a poner en el chat la dirección para que ustedes puedan visitar.
And now Melanie will be posting to our new website for CC9.
Viene también el número de teléfono de nuestra oficina y nuestro correo electrónico para el que guste contactarse con el Consejo del Distrito 9.
You will see our phone number and our website with the contact numbers.
Gracias, Melanie. Como siguiente punto, y aparte de esto, también quería comentarles que hemos estado teniendo reuniones alrededor de todo este mes, empujando a, primero, escuchar a los padres, a que nos digan cómo se sienten con el regreso a clases.
Also, I wanted to let everyone know we had meetings. We're planning to see how are they feeling.
Y realmente es preocupante porque a ciencia cierta no tenemos un protocolo de seguridad muy bien ya establecido.
It's something that worries because we don't have a protocol that is in place.
Pero seguimos al pendiente de todo las noticias que dan tanto la ciudad como también el DOE y nuestro superintendente.
But we still keep ourselves up to date, whatever with our guide from our news and whatever from our event from today or from Mr. Sherman.
Que sabemos que hacen su mejor esfuerzo por trabajar para la comunidad.
I know you do your best effort to work with the community.
Pero también les pedimos que consideren el pensamiento de los padres y las preocupaciones.
But also consider the parents' worry and their concern.
Gracias. Nuestro siguiente punto sería el informe del tesorero.
The next one will be our report, the treasury report.
Como ustedes podrán darse cuenta, esta es nuestra primera reunión con nuestro nuevo tesorero.
As you can know, this is our first meeting and we have a new treasurer.
Acabamos de pasar nuestro budget,
So we have approved our budget.
lo cual sería el reporte del tesorero.
So that will be the report of the treasury.
Pasamos con nuestro siguiente punto, que sería el sección de comentarios del público.
So now we'll move on to our next section where we will be public comments.
En nuestra sala tenemos al señor Chauncey, ¿no?
Now we have Mr. Thompson.
¿Usted quiere hacer algún anuncio? ¿Quiere compartirnos algo?
Announcement I want to share with us.
Adelante.
You could go ahead.
Very strange. I'm not sure how I feel about this experience. So I just want to mention around the Healing Centered Schools Ambassador PAC and the Healing Centered Schools Working Group has been working very closely with FACE and the Office of Wellness and the development of the program. And there's going to be 2 opportunities for the ambassadors to work together with FACE and representatives of the Healing Schools Working Group to prepare for your presentations. And we have asked, and hopefully all the ambassadors will receive in response to Wanda's question, lists of all the staff in their school that have completed the program, so that you can work to sort of develop our school transformation teams and collaboratively work to develop that healing-centered schools. We are also saying that all school staff, just to let folks know, are allowed to take the truck program for free until the end of this June. It's been extended one more year, so it's always, you know, looking at the funding to extend it, so staff can take that training for free until the end of the year. And we are looking to work forward with the districts and also across the Bronx and really making the Bronx and District 9 a model. District 9 had the highest level, or one of the highest levels of completion of the track program. So, you know, that's about our partnership working together. And then finally, I'm hoping that the CC tonight could talk about the possibility of a resolution, or, you know, at least bring up the issue of, you know, remote option, which I know many members are concerned about. Just because while we're working on healing-centered schools, we're working on culture responsive education. We did win, for folks who don't know, $500 million over the next 3 years for the Mosaic program that Brazil cringes every time she hears, but that's the culture responsive ESL curriculum from grades K to 12. So that is, it's 200 million this year, 200 million the following year, and in the third year, $100 million in the development of a culture responsive curriculum for all grades across the city. So we invite folks to our current action meetings, which are currently still virtual, not in person, and I will share our list with the CEC mailing list. Thank you so much.
Gracias, Chansi, por esa información. Y no sé si bien a mí si hay alguien que tenga un comentario.
At this time, no, I do not see any public comments. No.
Gracias, Melanie. Entonces podemos hacer el aplazamiento de nuestra sesión de calendario. Maribel hace la moción y la señora Jackson la secunda. Pues damos terminada entonces nuestra reunión anual del Distrito 9 por el día del mes de agosto. Gracias por acompañarnos y los invitamos a que nos sigan en nuestro website y que nos acompañen a las próximas reuniones. Muy buenas noches. Gracias a todos.
We have concluded our meeting for August, and we welcome you to join us in our website, and we welcome you for the next meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Próximo meeting
Look forward to seeing you all next time.
No se les olvide que es en esta misma escuela por los que nos gusten acompañar.
Our next meeting will be here and in the same school for those that want to join us.
Septiembre 21.
September 21st.
Muchas gracias a todos. Buenas noches.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Good night, everyone.